Welcome to Part 3 of the 4-part CFOA 2016 film study of illegal personal contact. This portion of the film study will discuss excessive contact as it pertains to a receiver who is a defenseless player. We will see examples of illegal and legal contact on those receivers. I'm your host, Mark Andrews, from the Orange County Football Officials Association. All opinions and guidance expressed in this video have been sanctioned by the California Football Officials Association's Instructional Chairman, Bobby Kennedy, and Steve Coover, Instructional Chair of the San Diego County Football Officials Association and the CIF Rules Interpreter. We know from our discussion in Part 2 of this video series that a defenseless player is a player who, because of his physical position and focus of concentration, is especially vulnerable to injury. We also know from the casebook that examples of defenseless players include a pass receiver whose concentration is on the ball and the contact by the defender is unrelated to attempting to catch the ball, and a pass receiver who is clearly relaxed when he has missed the pass or feels he can no longer catch the pass. Now let's look at some examples of personal fouls for excessive contact on a defenseless player. We begin with a great example of excessive contact on a defenseless player. This particular play is interesting in that 2 years ago, this flag was picked up because the hit was judged to be neither targeting or spearing. With the change to our rule on defenseless players, this is now a correct call. Let's break down the components of the foul. First, is the receiver defenseless? Second, is the hit by the defender unrelated to attempting to catch the ball? The receiver's focus and attention is on the ball, and therefore, by definition, he is defenseless. Clearly, the defender is not making an attempt to play the ball. He makes contact just below the shoulders of the receiver with his shoulder and attempts to punish the receiver. This is a personal foul for excessive contact. In this play, the receiver crossing the middle becomes defenseless as his focus is on the quarterback and then catching the ball. The defender, seeing the defenseless receiver, makes what used to be considered a legal hit on the receiver, separating the receiver from the ball. This play should now be judged to be a personal foul for excessive contact on a defenseless receiver, even though the contact is neither targeting or spearing. The defender must either make a play on the ball or lower his target. He must keep his head out of the contact and attempt to wrap up and make a tackle. This next example of a personal foul for excessive contact is very similar to the previous play. The only difference is the receiver actually completes the catch, but this is still excessive contact on a defenseless receiver. We'll just run it in real time. The first shot here, it's difficult to see because the play is up there in the top corner and the angle's bad, but we're going to see a much better angle coming up here. I want you to keep an eye on what the defender does. Is he playing the ball? Does he attempt to tackle the receiver? And where the contact is ultimately. Okay, we see the reception. He's obviously making no attempt to play the ball. There's no wrap. You can see the upward thrust. Watch it one more time. Slow motion. Regardless of whether the receiver hangs onto the ball, this is excessive contact. This should be an additional 15 yards. So let's talk about another circumstance where a receiver is a defenseless player, and that was delineated earlier. A pass receiver who has clearly relaxed when he has missed the pass or feels he can no longer catch the pass. We're going to have an example of that coming up. We've got the two players involved highlighted, A4 and B9. I'm going to run this in real time, and then we'll run it back slow. Break down the components of the defenseless player. So here we go. Keep an eye on the two players. Watch A4's attention. He's turned his head towards the ball. After it goes beyond him, B9 comes in and delivers a blow high. There's absolutely no reason for that. We've avoided using the term unnecessary for most of this kind of contact, but this is truly unnecessary. Watch again. Watch A4's focus. His concentration is on the ball. As it passes, he's still concentrating on the ball. He is therefore, by definition, defenseless. B9 is not playing the ball, and an argument could be made that he should recognize that this pass is incomplete. Instead, he delivers this hit high to a defenseless receiver. This last example of a personal foul for excessive contact on a pass receiver who has clearly relaxed when he's missed the pass comes on this play. Watch the player highlighted. He's the receiver. Now our defender is a good 5 yards away. He sees the missed completion. He's got him lined up. Show it to you in real time. Go back. Go slow motion. Now watch the contact. It's not high enough to be targeting, and it's not spearing. His head is to the side, but this is excessive and should be ruled a personal foul. So let's take a look now at some legal contact on a defenseless receiver. What are we looking for in legal contact? We want to see the defender lower their target below the shoulders. We want to see them get their head and helmet out of the tackle. It should be to the side. We want to see a wrap up, a tackle, or we want to see them going for the ball. In this first example, we're going to see the defender lower his target. So you notice the comment there. This is how players should adjust their contact. Run it in real time. Let's go back. And I'll run it in slow motion now. Now note the position of the receiver. He is concentrating on the ball. By definition, he's defenseless. Now watch the actions of the defender. He's going to strike him midsection with the shoulder, but there's no upward thrust. This is just a good, hard, clean hit. Finishes him off with the back. That's legal contact. This next play is a tricky one. This looks like it could be excessive contact at first look. And I'm just going to run this for you. Keep an eye on the two players highlighted. That's A13 and B9. I'm going to run it in real time. And that looks bad, right? I mean, there's helmet contact. But let's take a look at this in slow motion and observe the actions of both players, particularly the defender B9. So the first thing we need to determine is the receiver defenseless and therefore afforded extra protection against excessive contact. So let's keep an eye on the receiver. He extends. His focus is on the ball. He is by definition a defenseless player. Now let's watch the actions of the defender B9. He's going to lower his target. He's going to attempt to wrap. These are both elements that we are looking for in a legal tackle. There is incidental helmet contact, but this is a legal hit. This next example of legal contact on a defenseless receiver comes on an attempt to break up the pass. Now keep an eye on the defender number 12 and the receiver that he's guarding. I'm just going to run this in real time. You'll see that the contact by 12 is high, and there is some helmet contact there. But let's go back and take a look. He is going for the ball. He is trying to deflect that pass, and when he doesn't succeed in deflecting the pass, he goes for the wrap. Yes, there's some helmet contact, but it's incidental. This is legal contact. Before we move away from this topic of legal and illegal contact, I'd like to address the notion that somehow the game is being diminished by making the game safer. Coach Pete Carroll of the Seattle Seahawks and former USC head coach has put out an instructional video on what he calls Seahawk tackling. I'll let him explain.
Hi, this is Coach Pete Carroll of the Seattle Seahawks, and with the leadership of our defensive passing game coordinator, Rocky Seto, we've put together a film to present our style of tackling techniques. It's a system that we've been teaching and utilizing for the last 4 years at the Seahawks and since our days at USC. To break it down, our tackling system features shoulder tackling and a renewed emphasis to take the head out of tackling. We've found our style to be successful in the NFL and college, and we believe it could be employed on all levels. We're passionate about teaching this style of tackling because we desire to keep the standards of the game high and make the game as safe as possible.
Coach Carroll then goes on to explain 6 of his tackling techniques. The one that pertains to our discussion of defenseless receivers is called the strike zone. The video is about 21 minutes long, and it is a great example of safe tackling techniques. Any coaches or players that are watching this right now should go over to YouTube, look up Seahawk tackling, and watch the video. It's well worth your time. I'll let Coach Carroll explain the strike zone, but notice his emphasis on things we have talked about: lowering your target, getting your head and the opponent's head out of the game.
The strike zone applies to tackling defenseless opponents. The zone is classified as below the neck and above the knees, just like a baseball strike zone. We make contact using our shoulders at all times, especially in the strike zone. The helmet of both the tackler and the ball carrier are out of the game. Number 50 does a phenomenal job of adjusting his aiming point as the receiver lowers his body and the strike zone consequently drops.
To sum up, remember, legal contact to a defenseless receiver involves a lowering of the target, getting the head and helmet out to the side of the opponent, a wrap-up, and playing the ball. Well, that's it for this third part of our 4-part series on illegal personal contact. In the next section, we'll discuss flagrant fouls. If you haven't done so already, please take a look at part 1 of this series, which deals with targeting and spearing, and part 2, which addresses excessive contact during a blindside block.